Okay, folks, I'm back with another vlog. I want to try to keep this up as much as I can. I really do. I want to keep this steady. I want to keep this going. Um, so, honestly, I've been a little worried about the job. Last time I spoke to a person there was yesterday morning, and they took me on. They essentially hired me. However, they said they were going to send me an email so I could fill out all of my, tax information, where I want my money to go, all that, all that stuff. Um, Toward the middle of the call, he did verify my email as being the correct email, and then he, uh, toward the end of the call, gave me the incorrect email. And since I was so excited about getting the job, excuse me, I'm burping a little bit. Sorry about that. I was so excited about getting the job that I didn't correct him or question that. So I'm thinking he might have sent the email to the wrong address. I called him a total of 3 times so far. 3 times. And no response, no callback. So I'm thinking he might be out. Maybe it was his day off. Maybe he was only there for a half a day yesterday, and I called him toward the end of the day yesterday, and then I called him in the morning today. So it's possible that he might be just be out. However, he seemed to be very adamant that I complete this information before I start my orientation on Tuesday. Of course, I'll still be going to the orientation, despite what I hear or don't hear from him. But nonetheless, I'm a little bit of a worrywart. In fact, I worry about just about everything. It's kind of like it kicks in all the time with me, and I think the reason why it does that is because I've lived a life of great risk. I've taken a lot of risks with my decisions, and I think the worrying aspect just kind of pops up when I'm supposed to either, it's kind of like a fight or flight response in me. It's like, okay, I need to worry about all the different things that might happen as a result of this decision that I've made. So then when something does happen, I'm not caught off guard by it. You know, I try to examine every single scenario that could possibly happen. And to be honest, in most cases, these scenarios do not occur. These negative, worrisome scenarios do not occur. However, I can't help but being worried. Nonetheless, yeah, I thought I'd come back on and talk a little bit more about the band. The band started, Punk Guilt, started in 2015, I believe. It was either 2014, late 2014 to early 2015. And the reason why I started the band is because I moved from Mankato, Minnesota. I was out there for about 5, 6 years, and things just weren't working out for me there. And I still had the itch to make music, but there really weren't a lot of people to play music with out there. Yes, it had a small scene, but the scene was weird. I mean, to give you an idea as to how weird the scene was, one of my first punk shows in Mankato, Minnesota, I showed up wearing a suit and tie. It's because I had a job interview earlier that day. So I showed up, I found out about this show, and just, usually I find out about shows just by hearing them actually happening. So, as I'm walking down the street, I hear this really cool punk rock music coming from somewhere, and I find it, and I dash down there to see if I can catch a band, and man, they weren't very friendly. No, no, because I was the suit and tie guy, which is actually a really ridiculous stance to take for punk rockers. I can think of several punk rock bands, original bands, that definitely hold a lot more weight than these small time, what, ninth generation punk rockers, is that a lot of punk rockers back in the day did wear suits and ties. I can think of the Jam, I can think of the Fall, I can think of who else? Who else? I mean, even John Lydon with, Public Image Limited. They started wearing ties and suits and whatnot. I think essentially to fight against the ridiculous dogma that punk became at that time, where you had to have a mohawk and wear spiked leather jackets and ripped up clothes to be punk rock. And if you didn't do that, then you were just a poser. Um, but in fact, I actually view those people now as, uh, a little bit of a poser. So, um, yeah, it was weird. So I go down to this show, and it was a cool band, man. They were really rocking it out, and I was really having a good time. But I had to fight my way through a bunch of fucking people that tried to prevent me from actually even viewing the show. They all just swarmed on me, and they started calling me like some faggot businessman or something, and trying to start a fight with me. And I just cleared. I just walked right through them. I said, hey, folks, I'm here to rock out just like you guys are. And I remember I just cleared a path and went down to the band itself, and I walked right up to the guitar player as he's playing, and I just stood there and I looked at him, and he gave me the nod, like, yeah, man, it's cool, man, you're here, it's cool. Don't worry about these frickin' morons. It's all right, it's okay. And I enjoyed the rest of the show without incident. Um, I think a lesser man would have been frightened by the aggression, but of course, again, I've been to a lot of really crazy shows. I mean, I saw the Exploited uh, back in the '90s, and that show was nuts. I mean, that show was half punks, half skinheads. And I remember the skinheads were starting shit with all the punks, and of course, I was a punk. I wasn't a skinhead. I don't like skinheads. I never did. I never will. But yeah, and they started shit with us, and they were trying to beat us up during the show. And Waddy played it cool as a cucumber. He didn't want to take sides, of course, because it was his show. Of course, I've never envisioned Waddy as being a supporter of the skinhead movement. But there were a lot of punk bands that kind of drew those two different types of crowds. And I remember at the Exploited show, uh, at the end of the show, after the show was done, we were all being escorted out by Gus, the owner of the Unicorn. Did I say Cactus Club? I might have. It happened at the Unicorn, and I just went to a lot of shows at the Cactus Club. So I even worked there for a period of time. He escorted us out. All the punks were escorted out first by Gus and his entourage. And when we got out there in the back, man, all of Gus's dudes were holding on to baseball bats, and I was like, Gus, what's going on? And I actually got along really well with Gus. Gus got me out of a lot of interesting situations back in those days. I would always use the Unicorn as a place to duck out of a bad situation. Like if I was hanging out with somebody that I just met and they weren't quite right in the head, I would always say, hey, let's go to the Unicorn, man, and hang out there. And usually when we'd get down there, I'd say, hey, Gus, man, I'd point at the guy behind me, or something. I'd be like, hey, man, let me in. I need some private time. And he would do that and then not let the guy in. He would do stuff like that. He'd be like, oh, no, you're not coming in here, man. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got along with Gus really well. But at the end of the Exploited show way back in the day, they're all standing out there with baseball bats, and I'm like, Gus, what are you doing, man? And he's like, we're gonna kick the shit out of these skinheads. And I'm like, you guys better get going, man. You don't want to be a part of this. And I'm like, wow, okay, all right, we'll leave. We're out of here. And we just took off because I mean they were messing with us the entire show. I remember uh, during the show, and again, this is just kind of riffing off the influences portion of what I'm trying to do here regarding punk guilt. And I know I started about talking about punk guilt. We'll get back to that. Again, my mind is all over the place. I'm gonna tell a lot of different stories and go off on a lot of different tangents. So bear with me. But yeah, we split. We split. And back in those days, there was a huge, attraction for skins and punks at a lot of punk shows. Went to a Fear show, same thing happened. There was a huge divide in the audience. One side was skinheads, one side was punks. Of course, it was always the skinheads that would try to start stuff with the punks. The punks just didn't care. Most punk rockers, to be quite honest, are incredibly non-violent. I've only encountered a few punk rockers in my time that were violent, and honestly, I never considered them to be true punks if they were violent. I just thought they were just posing. They were just criminals posing as punks. Oh yeah, so I was telling you. So midway through the Exploited show, I get this small skinhead, this little, almost like a midget skinhead, walks up to me, and I'm pogoing, and I'm dancing, man. I'm jumping up and down, just in place. I never really liked slam dancing too much. It was just a personal thing. I've done it, but I never really enjoyed it that much. So I used to just stick to myself at the shows. And this little midget skinhead comes up to me, and he's just punching me in the stomach. Like, just punching me in the stomach, just continuously as I'm dancing. And honestly, he was so tiny and so small that I didn't even feel it. And I'm just looking down at him like, what are you doing, man? So that was one incident. And of course, in the pit, and again, it's a very small pit at the Unicorn, very small place. The skinheads were, of course, being very violent. Taking out like little things, little accoutrements, like little chains and whatnot to hit people with as they moshed for the Exploited. So yeah, I just wanted to jump in and give you guys a little bit of an update on how things are going. I know I flew off on a huge tangent there, and I do apologize. It's going to happen. But I do want to thank you guys for tuning in. It's going to be an incredible journey. It's going to be a long journey. Hey, I'll make no bones about it. It's going to be a long journey. This is no one and done. 10 videos and I'm out. This is probably going to go on for at least the next few years of my life. So, yeah, please tune in. Hit like, if you would, please. It's right down there somewhere. It's down there, I think, on this side. Or maybe this side. Hit like and subscribe. And it's going to be a fun journey. I guarantee it. All right, guys. Take care.